Your institution greenlights 10 AI initiatives, 10 teams, 10 budgets, 10 roadmaps. On paper, that looks like 10 times the value. Let me show you why it usually isn't. Here's the question that breaks the math. Across those 10 initiatives, how many definitions are there of a single, simple term, active customer? The customer service team counts anyone with a logged-in session in the last 90 days. The analytics team counts anyone with a funded balance. The surveillance team counts anyone who moved money. None of them are wrong. Each fits its own job. But they are quietly, confidently different, and nobody decided that on purpose. So you don't have 10 times the value. You have 10 times the reconciliation problem. When each line of business stands up its own AI initiative with its own embedded understanding, you get what we'll call context islands. A customer service layer, an analytics layer, a financial crime surveillance layer, each one functional, each one with its own definitions baked in, and this is the part that hurts, each one changing on its own schedule with no coordination. So analytics refines active customer in March. Surveillance never hears about it. Now 2 AI systems are reasoning from the same word and meaning 2 different things. Inside the institution, that erodes trust. A relationship manager and a risk analyst pull figures that don't tie out, and people stop believing the AI. Or worse, they stop checking. Outside the institution, it's worse than awkward. Conflicting figures surface in board reporting or a regulatory filing, and that's not an inconsistency anymore, that's a finding. 10 initiatives didn't give you 10 times the value. They gave you 10 islands that disagree and a reconciliation bill that grows every quarter. Quick recap. Last episode, we said the quiet part out loud. When an AI system gives a wrong or inconsistent answer in a bank, that's usually not a model failure. It's a context failure. The model did exactly what it was asked. That was about one use case at a time. Today's question is different. Even when each AI use case is fine on its own, do they add up across the institution, or do they quietly cancel out? Now invert it. Same 10 initiatives, but they all draw from one governed context graph instead of 10 private copies. Here's the mechanism, and it's the whole episode. When one definitional conflict gets resolved, when active customer is decided once by the accountable owner, that correction doesn't stay local. It improves every downstream use case at once. The 10th initiative inherits the validated definition the first 9 already fought over. Nobody rederives it. Nobody relitigates it. That's the difference between investment that fragments and investment that compounds. Fragmenting, every use case rederives understanding from scratch. Compounding, every use case stands on the validated work of the ones before it. One correction, every use case better, that is the asset. The second payoff is one your internal audit team already flags every year. They just don't call it an AI problem yet. Back in episode 2, we called this expertise, how work is actually performed, the alert disposition workflow in financial crime investigations, the exception steps in loan servicing, the month-end close. Today, most of that lives in outdated procedure documents, in ticket history, in chat threads, and in the heads of a handful of long-tenured staff. That is key person dependency. And that's not just an AI gap, it's an operational risk and a business continuity gap. If that person retires, goes on leave, or simply gets busy, the institution's real procedure walks out with them. Capturing that expertise as versioned, owned, certified assets in the graph isn't only an AI investment, it's an operational resilience investment. The procedure now survives the person. Same build, 2 returns, smarter AI, and a continuity gap you'd have had to close anyway. The third payoff is the one that should matter most to a board, exam readiness. You've seen this card before. When the regulator or internal audit looks at an AI capability, they ask 4 questions. Who approved this definition? What is its lineage? What depends on it? When was it last reviewed? Now picture answering those with context scattered across prompts, spreadsheets, and team chat decisions. You can't. There's no owner of record, no version history, no map of what depends on what. That's the difference between an AI program that's a supervisory concern and one that's a defensible capability. Scattered context can't be examined. Governed context can. A context graph makes AI behavior auditable. Attestation, versioning, a complete change trail. Same 4 questions. This time, everyone has an answer. And notice, it's the same asset that gave you compounding and resilience. Let's name the distinction at the center of this whole series, because we can finally show how it works. Compounding is not the same as accumulating. Accumulating is what a documentation dump does. You pile up more artifacts, more prompts, more PDFs, more dashboards. The stack gets taller, it does not get smarter, and it decays the moment it's written. Compounding is different. Each validated correction, each certified procedure, each resolved conflict makes the next use case faster and safer than the last. The value curve bends upward. In episode 1, we promised this, the 10th use case inheriting the first 9. Today you've seen the mechanism that makes it real, one governed graph, where every fix propagates. Accumulating gets you a bigger pile. Compounding gets you an asset. If you're the sponsor, The person funding this, here's the line to carry into the budget meeting. Uncoordinated AI doesn't just underdeliver value, it accrues risk faster than it accrues value. Every new island adds reconciliation cost, adds another place definitions can drift, adds another procedure stuck in someone's head, adds another question you can't answer at exam. So the more initiatives you launch without shared context, the worse your risk-to-value ratio gets. You are not buying leverage, you are buying liabilities that compound. The fix isn't fewer AI initiatives, it's one governed foundation underneath them, so that funding the 11th costs less and risks less than the first. So let's name the misconception this episode exists to kill. The belief is simple and almost everywhere. More AI initiatives automatically means more AI value. Ship more, win more. It's wrong. Without shared, governed context, more initiatives means more divergent definitions, more uncoordinated change, more reconciliation, and more exam exposure. That's more AI risk, not more AI value. Value doesn't come from the count of initiatives. It comes from whether they compound on one foundation. 10 islands subtract, 10 use cases on one graph multiply. Step back and look at what we actually argued. 1 asset, 3 returns. Consistency that compounds. Every fix improves every use case. Resilience, expertise survives the person who held it. And exam readiness. Every question the regulator asks has an answer of record. You don't fund 3 programs to get those. You fund 1. Here's where we are. Act 1 reframed the problem. The model is not the constraint. Act 2 drew the anatomy of a context graph and its boundaries. And Act 3, these last 2 episodes, laid out the stakes, the risk, and now the economics. The case is made. We've spent 3 acts on why. Why the model isn't the advantage, why context must be a graph, and why fragmenting it costs you. So here's the only question left. How do you actually build one? That's Act 4, 5 capabilities that turn out to be a single control loop. I'll see you there. Next up, capturing the parts of how your institution works that nobody ever wrote down.